All right, welcome into Ethan Skolnick's starting nine. A little bit later than 9 today. We had to do some scheduling changes this week. This is a special episode. We're going to be talking Dolphins today. If you want some Heat conversation, 5 on the floor from last night. 5 on the floor from last night. I did it with Greg Sylvander, and we went over everything good that happened in the Heat game last night against a B team from the Spurs. They didn't even have their full roster, and they're not great when they do. But Kyle Lowry's return to the lineup certainly seemed to help Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo, and Miami is now in a virtual tie for first place in the Eastern Conference, and Eric Spoelstra is going to do everything he can to try to lose one of the next 2 games so that he doesn't have to coach the All-Star team. I'm just projecting that based on his prior opinions of the All-Star game, but we'll see how that plays out. We are going to talk Dolphins today with Hussam Patel. Before we do, I want to tell you about one of the sponsors, the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I've got this here. This is Intense. I got this in Intense Nutrition, okay? They've got the stacks there. And Intense Nutrition. You can follow them on Facebook or Instagram. Again, it's an Intense Nutrition, 20% off everything in the store. The store is in Coral Springs. Everything in the store but protein. If you mention 5 Reasons, follow Intense Nutrition on Facebook. You can call them at 954-775-0257. Again, that's 954-775-0257. You can see the store, nice, clean, comfortable store. But here's the thing. You go to that 3-letter chain, right? They're going to try to sell you whatever corporate tells them to sell you. Of course, those are owned on a national basis. This is a local store. This is a South Florida store. We should be supporting local. We appreciate all of our South Florida sponsors. Go check out Mike and everybody else there. They can hook you up with local gyms as well. So go to Coral Springs, Intense Nutrition, again, on Facebook and Instagram, 954-775-0257, and it's right off University Drive. All right. Dolphins. We're going to do something different today. We're actually going to project forward. I was planning on doing an episode about Brian Flores, and I just realized that there's just too much going on at this point. And I honestly don't feel educated enough on it, because I don't think, unless you've been able to read the full complaint, that you really can speak on it. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at this point. I think if you want Brian Flores coverage, go to 3 yards per carry. They did a couple of episodes this week, one of which I'm just starting to dig into right now, which goes through all of it, and they do it in a nuanced way. Okay, so I would suggest that is our lead Dolphins podcast here at the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm going to make sure we get those on our YouTube channel as well. And of course, everybody has opinions about the Flores situation. Here's my just quick take on it. I think he has the perfect message, and I think he's an imperfect messenger. Okay, that's something that a friend of mine who's a Dolphin fan, who also happens to be an attorney who has read the entire complaint, said to me. And I feel, from what I've seen so far, that that's a fair assessment of it. I think his ultimate end game here, not for himself, but overall, which is to get more inclusivity, particularly at the top ranks of NFL organizations, is a worthy goal that I support, and I think everybody should support. But I don't necessarily think that he's the right messenger on this, because something sort of stuck out to me yesterday that I saw on Twitter, and it was from Kenny Stills. Okay. And I thought Kenny Stills was incredibly gracious about this, but he put out a thread about the situation, which he supported Flo, etc. But in the last message of the thread, he sort of said, and I don't have it in front of me, and I wish I had given to our terrific producer, Manny Chang, before we started, but he essentially said, we have to do this when it's not just affecting us. And Hussam has just pulled this up here, or sent it. And I feel like if you look back at the situations that happened when Flores was the coach of the Dolphins, he wasn't very supportive of Kenny Stills with this. He kind of taunted him with the whole Jay-Z thing. And I just think overall, Flores doesn't present this perhaps in a way that I think is going to have the most impact. Here's just some Kenny Stills. My last thought on the situation with Flo: this is a lesson in empathy. Let's not wait until the situation affects us personally to take action. I hope the league comes to their senses that his efforts are a huge part in creating the change the game needs, which, again, is incredibly gracious from Kenny Stills. But it's that second sentence there: a lesson in empathy. Let's not wait until the situation affects us personally to take action. And I think that's why I'm not totally on board with Brian Flores as the messenger of this. We're going to welcome in Hussam Patel here. You can follow him at Hussam Patel, which is quite convenient, unlike some others at the 5 Reasons Sports Network who don't put their actual names in the handle. You can catch his work on 5reasonsports.com, and also he was a regular guest and host of the post-game show this year, Final Yard, on the YouTube channel. All right, we're not going to talk a lot about Flores. I wanted to address it, but again, that's where I'm at with it. I feel like I need to be educated more about it. Honestly, I feel like most people need to be educated. I feel like people, if you're going to comment on this, you need to read the entire complaint. But you also need to take into consideration Flores' recent history with the Dolphins, Ross's history when it comes to race issues, which there is a lot of good there, along with some of the bad. And I think then you have to project it to the rest of the league and sort of the way the league has handled these situations. And there's no way around this. There have been, 6 head coach hirings so far in this cycle. There have been no minorities hired to this point. Now, you can make an individual case for each of the particular candidates. The O'Connell one, to me, is a little trickier, but it does seem, and I thought Stephen A. Smith, who I don't usually agree with, actually said it right yesterday on First Take. He said, it seems like there's a clique right now, and it just doesn't seem like black coaches are in the clique. It's pretty much, if you're part of the, McVay, Shanahan clique, you're going to get a job, even if you were just a quarterback coach. But otherwise, you don't have those kind of opportunities. So obviously, that's still out there. We're going to still be following it, but I want to pivot ahead with you because the Dolphins still have to hire a coach, Hussam. I mean, I feel like that's been lost. And it seems like they're down at this stage to 2 candidates. Whether or not Jim Harbaugh was a real candidate for this, we'll never really know for sure, but it seems like he was not. Doug Peterson, who was mentioned early in the process, never seemed to materialize in any way with Miami, and now he's been hired with Jacksonville. And pretty much, and it doesn't seem like Vance Joseph is in the mix now, so we're pretty much down to Mike McDaniel and to Kellen Moore. Give me the positives and negatives of both before we get into the public relations part of this.
Sure. So I'll start off with the lesser known candidate in Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. Good thing, he's had success with the Cowboys somewhat as a backup quarterback, then got elevated to the quarterback coach behind Dak Prescott, and then elevated as the offensive coordinator. Now, he's had career years with the Cowboys and this offense and really helped Dak Prescott along the way in career statistics, touchdowns, passer rating, completions, things like that, and just making him more effective as a quarterback. The downside to Kellen Moore is the fact that he's really only got 3 years of coaching experience in his belt. Compared to the other coaches in this cycle, they have decades or more years of coaching experience. Moore's really been in Dallas his entire career as a backup and a coach, so he really understands that system super, super well. Now, my criticism is that if you take him out of that environment, can he succeed? Who is his coaching staff going to be? Who are his connections on the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball? How will his relationship with Chris Grier be like? Because honestly, I really can't gauge Kellen Moore that well. Mike McDaniel, he's been in the league for 15 years, about 1 year less than former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores. Been part of the Mike Shanahan tree. He was an intern with Denver with Mike Shanahan. He's best buds with Kyle Shanahan. As you said it, everybody is getting hired off the McVay Shanahan tree because they're all having success. Matt LaFleur is having success. Kyle Shanahan is having success. Sean McVay is having success. And I really wouldn't be surprised if Kevin O'Connell has some success either. The Dolphins also went into this interviewing Thomas Brown, the Rams running back and assistant head coach as well, and he comes from the McVay Shanahan tree. As for McDaniel, in terms of X's and O's in football, I mean, he's a genius. He is absolutely fantastic. He's everywhere he's been, he's really helped the running game thrive and his quarterbacks thrive. Now, the quarterbacks he's had includes Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, Matt Ryan, who was a good quarterback, and in 2016 they made him an elite quarterback and on his way to the Super Bowl, and we know how that Super Bowl went. Now he was working with Jimmy G, who's going to be replaced by Trey Lance. Now, Jimmy G, he's an average quarterback, he's okay, but with Jimmy G, the last 3 seasons, they've made the playoffs. They've made the championship game twice. They've made the Super Bowl.
Well, they won 3 out of every 4 games when he started, which is significant. I mean, if you're looking at a quarterback like Tua, who I think I think we all agree at this point, even though there obviously are the stands on one side and the crazy critics on the other side. I think anybody who's a little nuanced on this, can make the point that he has shown signs of being a good NFL quarterback, but that he likely needs some help around him. I think that's a fair assessment, which I think is the same assessment you can make about Jimmy Garoppolo. And they won. I'm not saying
It's
that
the
he's
same assessment you could make with Kirk Cousins and Matt
right.
Ryan and everybody else too.
Yeah, I mean Matt is I think a little higher level
Yeah.
in terms of his skill set, but you're right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, Kirk Cousins, maybe a little bit because, and again, he got paid for it, but there is no one in there that is just blow your way with talent. There's no Aaron Rodgers in there. There's nobody who's gonna. So there is. I guess that's part of what I think is exciting about McDaniel to people is that he has won with this type of quarterback before. They have a running game in San Francisco that they did without really elite backs. And they managed to be successful.
Because it's a system thing. It's that
system. And
Shanahan system thing.
Miami doesn't have elite backs, as we know. They basically found their starting running back, off the street in week 14. So I think that is what's attractive. I guess the concern for both of these guys would be this. A couple things. One, you mentioned Kellen Moore being in one organization his whole career. We just saw that with Brian Flores, that he never really got out of the New England comfort zone. And there is this thing about coaches who stay in one place so long, they don't know any other way to do it.
Right.
That's a little bit concerning. Whereas McDaniel has bounced around a little bit more. I kind of like that. But
he's
let me
also
ask
had
you
experience outside the NFL in the UFL as well as the coach.
Yeah, and again, that's trying to make the most maximize your roster. There are some things about Mike McDaniel, honestly, as someone who follows the Heat closely, that remind me a little of Eric Spoelstra. In terms of, obviously Eric is a little more maybe polished than McDaniel is in terms of presentation, but in terms of thinking the game and trying to get outside the box a little bit, and the youth too. I think also, we saw that obviously with Eric took over when he was in his 30s, late 30s. So there is some similarities, but I guess the thing about both these guys, I just don't know is the standing in front of a room and leading an organization that is in turmoil right now. I mean, let's just be. I mean, again, that's why I can't put the Flores thing totally to the back, because it does play a role here. I mean, this organization is a laughingstock nationally at this stage. There's a lot of damage that has to be repaired. The one thing we haven't heard from Hussam, we really haven't heard from a lot of Brian Flores's players on defense from the Dolphins. It's been interesting. I don't know if there's been a hush, some sort of a hush agreement on all of this, but there were a lot of guys on that defense that were loyal to Flores, were upset that he was fired. And I'm wondering, okay, you have an organization that now, is at odds with the head coach that you backed and you supported, right? And now you're going to bring in another head coach without head coaching experience, mostly to benefit the offense.
Right.
I'm just wondering, there are some core guys on this defense. I wonder how they're going to handle that. That's not going to be an easy assignment for either of these guys.
Well, here's the thing, and this goes back to your point about McDaniels. McDaniels has been in the league for 15 years. He knows how to command players' respect. He knows how to command a locker room, even without being a head coach. He's developed relationships with players as a skill position coach, as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterback coach as well. Now, he can't control the outside noise from an organization and management perspective, but he can control what's happening on the field. He can control the game, and that's really the thing, because now it's not really about having a coach who looks like a linebacker, really taking charge of men and being that alpha dog mentality.
Dan Campbell, basically.
The game has changed, and people have changed too. And this comes back to even the workforce. If you explain to, your employees, your players, whatever you want to call it, what you should be doing, what your job should be, and explain it in such a simplistic way, they'll buy in. And that's what Kyle Juszczyk, the 49ers fullback, has said about Mike McDaniel. That's what George Kittle has said. That's what numerous other players and quarterbacks and former coaches with McDaniel have said. Even Pierre Garçon. I mean, Pierre Garçon doesn't strike as a player you immediately think outside of your head, but Pierre Garçon was a very productive receiver in Washington. He was RG3's and Kirk Cousins' best friend, and he was very, very productive, where if you put him somewhere else, he wouldn't be that same guy.
Yeah, and he's a local guy too. All right, we're gonna introduce one sponsor here, and then I'm gonna ask Hussam a question to close. I think I know the answer before I ask it, but we're still gonna do that anyway. We do want to tell you about another of our sponsors. Here's a new sponsor. Again, we always talk about local here on Starting Nine and the 5 Reasons Sports Network. This is as local as you can get. They're down the street from me. Signs Broward of Fort Lauderdale. Signs Broward, FortLauderdale.com. The phone number 954-791-8685. If your business is looking for signs, this is the place to go to. They do graphics and all that cool stuff for you. A lot of the restaurants on Las Olas, okay, if you've been to Piazza, some of those other spots, they use signs from Signs Broward. Fort Lauderdale, they do the repair for you as well. We know sometimes the signs break down, especially in the bad weather down here. So go to Signs Broward, Fort Lauderdale. This is a one-stop shop. We used to tell you about everything tradeshows.com. They've done a lot of work for them as well. So go to Signs Broward, Fort Lauderdale.com. You can check out all their work here. They've got a gallery. They've also got an Instagram page at Signs Broward, Fort Lauderdale, and they post everything there too. So again, it's 954-791-8685. Signs Broward, Fort Lauderdale.com. I feel like, well, I know because you posted a story that you have a clear preference here, and you've had this preference for a while, and that really hasn't wavered. I wouldn't think, through the Harbaugh stuff, through what's happened now with this Dolphins mess, you still feel Mike McDaniel is the right guy for this job. Tell people, and this is, of course, a Samurai Radio, our Kai Chisholm special. Tell people why we won't be back here in 3 years. Because I think that's what Dolphin fans are afraid of, right? We're always back here in 3 years, okay? I mean, with Philbin, it was like 3 and change. But Philbin, Gase, Flores, 3 years, go hire the complete opposite to what you hired the last time, right? We're going to get it right this time, right? Chris Grier will still be here because, I mean, he has a 300-year contract. But tell me why we're not going to be here in 3 years if Mike McDaniel is the hire.
Now, I cannot guarantee that we'll be back here in 3
years.
No,
you got no. You. I mean, I don't know if 5 Reasons still going to be here, but if 5 Reasons is here, why are we not going to be back here in 5 years? 3 years if they hire Mike McDaniel?
I just think it all comes down to the play on the field. Now, again, it's all about the regime. But if we're strictly just talking about coaching, Gase couldn't have a competent enough offense to have a match with the defense that Joseph had, even though the defense was not the best. Philbin couldn't get the offensive line right. He had the defense, couldn't get the offense right. Flores couldn't get the offense right either.
I mean, there's a pattern here. Okay,
there's a pattern here. There's a pattern here. McDaniels, you're going to get a good offense, and it is going to be a challenge for him to get the offensive line right, to get his weapons, to scheme for Tua. But he already has really, really good players in defense, and I know we talked about players not really showing their support for Flores in this lawsuit, but the coaching staff, Gerald Alexander and Charles Burke, have come in support of that, and the Dolphins organization and brass have said that they would like to get the defensive pieces back. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Yeah. Now, McDaniel has connections all around the league. He can get, different offensive coordinators and different defensive coordinators and position guys if he wants to through his connections. Now, we may not know who they may be, but you got to wonder if, they're competent enough to the challenge.
Well, I would think he's been researching this because, I mean, this rumor has been floated for a while, yep. But I do think it's going to be a challenging transition if they don't keep some of the defensive coaches. And that, again, has to be McDaniel being comfortable with them as the new coach. But, because you don't want to inherit a guy you can't work with. That has happened so many times in Dolphin history. It happens all the time. But you have to but I think you got to keep somebody because I think it's been interesting, the silence from the defensive players. I don't think it's that they don't support Flores. I think it's because they're under contract and they're afraid to really speak out. But I wonder what's going to happen behind the scenes if they feel that the wrong guy was hired. I just, because already this thing has become toxic. It's like a relationship you have where you're really close to somebody and then you hate the person afterwards. I mean, that's what this feels like. There's a lot of photos of Steve Ross hugging Brian Flores, and we're all on the same page, and we're on the same team, and we're building this thing together. And now you kind of see what this has devolved into. So whoever's fault that is, I'm not assigning blame in this minute. it's challenging for the new coach to navigate, I think. And we'll see if Mike McDaniel's the guy. I'm with you on Mike McDaniel for one reason, Hussam. He's interesting.
He's interesting to the media, number one. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know what? Like, I just want them to be interesting in a productive way. The only time that we hear about them in the national news is Bullygate, Cokegate, Flores Gate, one gate after another. I'd like them to knock the gate down to the playoffs once. Okay, once in my lifetime. Hussam,
very, very low standards. You know, I like him just because of what he brings to a team, what he can do there's this somewhat, I guess you can say, false hope that he'll finally fix an offensive line, which has been marred by incompetence the last 19, 20 years, to finally have a productive running game that can match the defensive side of the ball. Like, it's just that hope that resonates with you, but we all know that hope comes crashing down within a season or two. So it's just that cycle happening over and over again.
Tell me we won't be here in 3 years. First thing he needs to do is, Jesse Davis, thank you for your service. And that's it. All right. You see, I'm a walking billboard today. Prizepicks.com. Use the code 5, FIVE, Daily Fantasy. They've already got the Super Bowl props up there. And I don't know. Can I reach? Biscayne Bay Brewing, another official beer of the 5 Reasons Sport, the official beer of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Manny, thank you. Hussam, thank you. Next week, we'll have coverage as soon as the Heat don't hire coaches. As soon as the Dolphins hire a coach, we will be live. I promise you that. Of course, we'll have Heat coverage going into what's probably going to be a non-eventful trade deadline for them next week. Have a good day, everybody.